Gentle Dog Trainers channel. I'm your host Olivia De Santos, and today we're talking about how to stop your dog from barking. So in the previous video we talked about why dogs bark, so check that out in the iCard above me somewhere around here, and also in the description box down below. We talked about the reasons behind why your dog barks, but in this video we'll talk about how to stop your dog barking if they are causing a nuisance. But before we dive into the video, I do encourage you to subscribe to this channel. If you want to raise happy, healthy and well-behaved dogs, we make videos every single week to help you be the best dog owner that you can be. So click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Now, let's talk about nuisance barking. So the first question that I have for you before we dive into the content here is, do you need to stop your dog barking? And by this I mean that barking is a completely natural and normal behavior, normal canine behavior. It's how they speak to us, it's how they communicate with others. So, you know, if barking becomes a nuisance, and we will put a definition on that, then absolutely you can use positive training techniques to intervene. But if your dog is barking a little bit, you know, if the doorbell rings and they bark once or something like that, then I don't actually personally find that that's a huge problem. It's only when they get into a frenzy and they start barking and barking and barking and they won't stop, and it's really excessive, it's causing issues with the neighbors, then I'd say intervene. But if it's just a normal part of canine behavior, then I don't think that this is something that you need to train away. Every single dog barks, and if you don't like a barking dog, then maybe owning a dog is not for you. I'm going to talk about this on an Australian law level. Certain states have different definitions of what excessive barking is. There are some city councils that will have a very specific definition of barking, like in Darwin City, the council stipulates that a dog is considered a nuisance if barking exceeds 3 minutes in any 30-minute period between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following morning. Barking exceeds 6 minutes in any 30-minute period between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. that day. But most states have quite an open-ended definition of barking, like this one. The Dog Act of 1976 defines nuisance created by dogs as it creates a noise by barking or otherwise which persistently occurs or continues to a degree or extent not normally habitual in dogs, and has a disturbing effect on the state of reasonable physical, mental or social well-being of a person. Essentially, if it's bothering any of your neighbours enough, they have the right to report excessive barking. And we have done an entire article about what is excessive barking, what is considered excessive barking, which is linked in the description box down below, so do check that out for a bit more info on this in particular. But let's say that you have identified that your dog is a chronic barker, he's upsetting the neighbours, and you don't want to get into trouble. So what can you do? Well, I'm going to give you 6 techniques that can help with training away excessive barking, plus a little bonus at the end maybe, so maybe 7. Now, these 6 techniques are all positive training techniques. At Gentle Dog Trainers, we believe in gentle, positive training. We don't believe in cruelty or force or anything like that. So these are all techniques that vets recommend and that are gentle and affirming for your dog. The first thing to do is to rule out any health conditions. So in the previous video, I did say that pain is a really big reason why your dog might be barking excessively. Could also be that they are a little bit older and they have canine cognitive dysfunction syndrome, or they're developing canine cognitive dysfunction syndrome, and that can cause them to bark more often than they did previously as well. You need to identify exactly why your dog might be barking and just rule out those health conditions straight away. Do check out the video on how to calm an anxious dog, where we do talk about the symptoms of anxiety, because it could be from that source. And if you find that there is a health reason why your dog is barking, then solving the health then solving the health condition will likely solve the excessive barking too. So first things first, rule out any sort of health issue. The second technique is to find the trigger and solve the trigger. So in our previous video, we did talk about why dogs bark, and there are tons of different reasons why they might. But if there's a very specific trigger, so let's say that it's a certain neighbourhood cat, or it's the doorbell ringing, or it is the vacuum cleaner being on, then there could be many reasons why your dog decides to bark. And if you identify specifically what the trigger is, then you might just be able to remove the trigger, and if by doing that, so you'll reduce the amount of barking. This is particularly helpful if your dog is feeling particularly anxious or scared of a particular item or an animal or a person. This is quite an easy fix. The fourth technique is to praise your dog when they are in their favorite barking spot but not barking. So let's say that your dog is like mine and he goes to the bottom of the garden right at the end of the gate and barks through the gate. Let's say that he looks through the gate and he's completely calm. That is a good point to praise and reward him for just being calm, because usually in that space he is being a total crazy chronic barking mess. So if you encourage him and give him positive reinforcement of being calm in that region, then you might be able to curtail some of the excessive barking. The fourth technique is redirection. So if your dog's trigger is around, so that could be like a neighbor dog or something is walking past, then you can redirect them with a treat or a game. Ask them to come to you and redirect them before they start their barking frenzy. And if you do this repeatedly a few times, soon enough they may not even register that the neighbor dog is walking around. Now, I think redirection is probably the most complicated one to achieve, depending on what the trigger is, because if the trigger is a neighbor dog, then it is one of those things where it's kind of natural for them to know that they're coming, sniff them out, etc. And you will have to do a really, really good job of redirecting them to something else for this technique to work. So though this is a recommended technique by dog trainers, it is quite complex. It is quite difficult, so I will warn you about that. The fifth technique is to ignore the barking. So we're very, very tempted to kind of yell at our dogs or call out to them when they are doing this excessive barking routine, and it's actually not that effective. You are actually positively reinforcing the barking by yelling out to them. So the idea is that if you are going to use the redirection technique, then you use a calm, firm voice and don't raise your voice at your dog when they are barking, because it sounds like you're kind of joining in. The sixth technique is to try barking collars. So these are for a last resort, I'd say. If none of the other training techniques have worked for you thus far, then you can try gentle correctional collars. So we recommend citronella collars, which actually have a sensor, and they will spray citronella if your dog is barking excessively. So this is quite a good way to go. There are also vibration collars, and there's also sound collars. So these are good training collars that you can look into if your dog is an excessive barker. And we do have links for all of those down in the description box down below, plus our reviews of the best ones on the market. So do check that out there. The seventh or bonus tip here is to involve a professional dog trainer. If you are just at your wit's end, you've tried everything. You've tried the collars, you've tried redirecting, you've removed all the triggers, and your dog just barks all of the time. Then if you've also ruled out the health condition, then it's time to bring in the big guns. It's time to involve a professional dog trainer. They can help you find out what the triggers are if you don't know what they are already. It can also give you some more structured techniques on how to train your dog away from this excessive barking habit. I hope this video was helpful for you. I've been Olivia DeSantos for the Gentle Dog Trainers channel. If you enjoyed this video, then you'll really like this one. Me and my dog Pip will see you in the next one. Take care.